I'm Paul Shread, International Editor of the Cyber Express, and this podcast is coming to you from the Black Hat Security Conference in collaboration with Suraksha Catalyst. And with me to discuss AI security and governance are Willy Leichter, CMO of PointGuard AI, and John Sapp, CISO of Texas Mutual. Welcome, gentlemen. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, let's start with the threat landscape. John, what are the top three things CISOs must understand about how AI is transforming the enterprise threat landscape?
It's kind of an old acronym, governance, risk, and compliance, but those three things still ring true. Governance is about having effective oversight of something. And in this case, you have to have effective oversight when it comes to AI, which means the ability to do discovery and understand what AI systems are deployed in your environment. Once you've done that, now you have to understand what is the risk that they posed by their use. And then it is, last but not least, does it leave you in or out of compliance with whatever the regulatory requirements are?
And I'll just add to that, there is a larger attack surface, there are new elements, but it's on top of our existing, should be on top of our existing security, understanding security infrastructure. And when John mentions risk, absolutely, risk is always contextual. What does it mean to your organization? What does it mean to what you're trying to do? You get overwhelmed with potential risks. You've got to narrow it down to what's most important, and that's always contextual for your organization.
Let's stay with that thought for just a second. What are the most overlooked dimensions of AI-related risk, and where should security leaders be focusing next?
So AI is hitting us, incredibly quickly, and that's unprecedented. But I think a lot of it does come back to visibility, as John said. There are new things we need to look at. We need to be monitoring, we need to be testing models to make sure they're not doing strange things. So that's a new element. There are notebooks that can connect all kinds of things autonomously. The data, suddenly it's a spider's web of potential data connections. But they're not necessarily different. They're just happening faster and potentially at a larger scale. But I think, as we said before, not treating AI as some new strange beast that we have no understanding what it is. We're adding it often on top of what we already do. We certainly need to catch up and make sure AI isn't running rampant or AI projects are being monitored. We need to look at this broader supply chain, certainly. But as John was saying very well, it still comes back to, can I get the bigger picture of what this all means?
Yeah. Let's so what do you do when you're talking to the board about all this stuff? How do you convey AI risks like model vulnerabilities or misuse to executives and board members who aren't really all that steeped in the tech?
It's kind of an evolution of what we've done up to now in terms of how do we help them understand what is our risk to a cyber attack. But it's not just specifically a cybersecurity attack that is the only risk we have to worry about. It's also technology risk. And AI fits in both of those categories. There's technology risk from the use of AI, because there can be the unintended consequences of the exposure of data. And if the model is not available and it's in the middle of a process that is something that is critical to your business, now a technology outage in that regard could disrupt that process. So you have those cascading risks that come from that. But when trying to talk to the board about it, it is still putting it into that business risk context and being able to help them understand what are the different categories of risk that we have and what are the triggers that could cause that, and sharing with them what the probability of, I call it the probability of success for an attack or the probability of occurrence for an outage, and using Monte Carlo type simulations. Risk quantification in financial terms is always the simplest way, because everybody at the board understands finance, because that's a requirement, right, to be a board member. If you don't understand finance, that you have no shot at being on a board. So if you can put it into those terms and help them understand that either a cyber attack or a technology outage could impact these critical assets, and the value of those assets and the potential losses, whether it's operational, financial, strategic risk. I go through all of the categories of risk, so now they understand how they're all connected.
Interesting. So what metrics do you use to gauge AI risk and governance effectiveness?
So there are a couple of different ones. So my overall pursuit is to enable the responsible use and secure adoption of AI. So that's the outcome that I'm trying to achieve, right? So in measuring that, it is, I want to understand what is the adoption of use of AI in the organization. So you look at the number of systems that are discovered associated with the number of use cases, and you can now start to understand how well your organization is using it. So that's one of those metrics that we actually have as part of our AI Governance Council that we have. We actually mapped out a starter set of metrics. We wanted to know and understand, is there adoption? If there is, great. Okay, are we adopting it responsibly? So now looking at the number of systems that we are using and how many are outside of the guardrails or the policy that we've set. So you really kind of start very basic, but then it also, so you're capturing the number of violations of your AI governance policy and being able to see it that way. And so now you can, in a structured and meaningful way, help your organization more broadly understand, great, keep using AI because we are aligned to the business strategically, because we're able to either increase our operational efficiency and productivity or improve customer experience. And those are the two key things. And so we want to measure how well are we doing that.
Yeah, and you touched on all of those elements, which I think we are supporting, which is accurately discovering where it's being used, getting a handle on this new supply chain, because we've learned, the tough way about supply chain issues, how they can come from out of nowhere. So now we have a much larger supply chain. There's it's very easy for data scientists, others experimenting with AI, to download all kinds of models and test kits and data sets and things. All good if you understand what they are. But we've got to have guardrails around them. We've got to have governance. You can't, there's got to be rules, there's got to be consistency and visibility. And 9 times out of 10, the mistakes are inadvertent. They're not malicious. They're, I downloaded this thing a month ago. I forgot about it. It's sitting there. So yeah, of course I don't want it being a risk.
Yeah, and if I may add on to that, something you said that's really key, and it is understanding the AI bill of materials that are part of that, because there's a lot of open source components out there that you don't know. It goes back to an old acronym when we were doing application security risk management back in 2010, 2011. And there was a term that was thrown out there, SOUP, software of unknown pedigree. And that's what you have here. And if you're not able to discover that, know what it is, know if it's been compromised itself, that's also part of discovering that risk. You don't want to find yourselves in a AI version of what happened to SolarWinds.
That's interesting.
And discovery also leads to an ongoing process of monitoring, red teaming, testing it continuously, bringing it into the fold, so you've got the guardrails around it, and you're continuously watching what's happening, because these things are dynamic by their nature. So they're not static threats.
Yeah. Huh. Willy, do you see KPIs changing to include AI governance? Has that started happening yet?
I would say, playing off of John's answers, I would say yes and no. I would say the underlying KPIs probably shouldn't change, but there's new elements you need to be measuring. There's new components you need to be looking at. So there's we've expanded the attack surface. Lots of people talk about that, but it's so often comes back to fundamentals. Did you password protect this MLOps environment? Do the right people have access to it? Do we have consistent visibility? So, I'd say specifics, yes, those always change. But broadly, what you're looking for, I would say less so.
Yeah, I think it's I think you're spot on there, Willie. And I think when you think about the attack surface itself, part of that is ensuring that there's integration with your your MDR, XDR environment, your SIM, being able to, and Willie knows my saying, you got to be able to aggregate, correlate, deduplicate, normalize, contextualize, and prioritize all of those things that you discover, so you understand what you should be focused on remediating first as you discover it. So,
And I'll just say, this is my soapbox I like to get on, and learning this from John is we've spent years trying to break down silos in security. So if we create a new silo with AI, we're going in the wrong direction. And there's always a tendency, you go to these trade shows, we're guilty of this as well. AI is the new thing. We need to detect. But you've got to do something with that information and contextualize it, and all the other, exactly what John said. If you don't understand it, if you're creating more noise, more red lights going off, then it's adding to the problem.
You kind of touch on it. Are AI risks being integrated into broader enterprise risk programs, or are they staying siloed?
they are being integrated into, and as a matter of fact, as I think about it, the way we've done it at Texas Mutual is, it is now a new thread under enterprise risk management. So when I report cyber risk and technology risk, I report AI risk now as a separate category, but that's how we provide visibility across the entirety of the organization at the executive level. And so then that enables us to better report at the board level, because now we've got everybody in the loop, on the same page, and understanding what our risk is and what we're doing about it.
And I'd echo, we've learned this working with John and with some of our other clients, that if you treat it as the next layer on the stack, the next layer of frosting on your cake, whatever analogy you want to use, that then you're taking the right approach. Of course, there are new things you need to worry about, but it needs to be integrated into the process and understood as part of your stack, because you can have weaknesses anywhere in the stack. And you may not even know that AI was in that chain, in that attack chain. So you've got to look at it holistically.
Yeah. Huh. So what would you say to security leaders and CISOs who are trying to make AI part of mainstream governance?
I'd say yes.
Okay then.
Don can speak to it more eloquently, but I think, like we said, take a beat. It is potentially overwhelming, but we need to not necessarily slow down, but take a breath, think through the basics, apply what we know to this new area, because it's going to be the same results, same problems.
Yeah, I think it is, have a strategic approach to it. Don't do it ad hoc, but if you strategically map out and understand what the business's approach is to AI, what is the business's AI strategy, you can align with that, because we've had to do that for, this is 20 years now, because I call the CISO generation, we're now going into generation 4, because we're 30 years into this, going into 31. So, but we've had to evolve. We went from being very technical to being, okay, now you have to be business aligned and have business acumen. Then in 2015 it became, okay, now we became risk managers and being more effective at managing risk, and now we just have a different category of risk, but it's just a strategic evolution of your current and existing information security program. And that's why I like to define it as, when I build a program, I want to establish a modern information security program. And modern is designed to keep up with the times. So that's why we use the term modern, because we can't wait and modernize once the new thing is already come and gone. You're playing catch up. So it's you can't get ahead of it, but you can do your best to keep pace with it.
Yeah. So what's one piece of advice you would give to CISOs who are just starting to take a look at their organization's AI exposure?
I get at risk of repeating myself. I would say, certainly use discovery, find out what you're doing, use new tools to do that, because there are new things entering this, there are new components. But make sure you understand, and you're part of the solution to understanding what the AI is trying to accomplish, being part of that team, I guess. Certainly, we saw maybe a year ago when this was all emerging that kind of not a rift, but gaps between the CISOs and the data scientists and the business owners who were, kind of not at the same pace. I think that's coming together, absolutely needs to. So it requires collaboration probably with more people in the organization now, because there's new elements, new people, new ideas coming in. But beyond that, I think we know fundamentally what to do. We have to apply it to this new environment.
Yeah, I would say, as I think about it, it's define an outcome that you're trying to achieve first, because if you define that outcome, now you can identify what is the value you're going to deliver to the organization, because we all are responsible for value delivery to the organization. And if you don't have a defined outcome, your value is going to be wishy-washy. So that's why I started with enable the responsible use and secure adoption of AI. That's the outcome. And by virtue of that, I will deliver the value of the business being able to achieve their goals and objectives of utilizing AI to improve operational efficiency and customer experience by doing so in a secure way.
All right. I would like to thank our guests, Willy Leichter of PointGuard AI and John Sapp of Texas Mutual, for their great insights. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul.
This was great. I really appreciate it.